Welcome to Deconstructing the Culture. I am your host, Elisa Steele, and today I have the honor of introducing you to Charlotte Pence. Thank you so much for joining us, Charlotte.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
A little bit about Charlotte. She is an accomplished writer whose work has been published on Glamour magazine and featured in US Weekly and on CNN, among other major media outlets. She's a current contributor to Light Workers and writes columns on religion and literature, both great subjects, by the way. A graduate of DePaul University with a BA in digital cinema, screenwriting, and English, Charlotte contributed writing and producing skills to the Emmy Award-winning documentary Fleeced. She recently accompanied her parents on the campaign trail across America, where her father, Vice President Mike Pence, ran for office alongside President Donald Trump. Her first children's book, Marlon Bundo's A Day in the Life of the Vice President, was published by Regnery Kids on March 19, 2018, and became a New York Times bestseller. And Charlotte's latest and first adult book, Where You Go, Life Lessons from My Father, was recently published on October 16, 2018. Oh my goodness, Charlotte, you are so incredible, and I love the voice that you're bringing to the conservative movement. Thank you again for joining us. We're going to go ahead and jump right in.
Cool.
So I know in the past you have been harassed and shunned when you've been out with your father, particularly I'm thinking when you guys went to go see the play Hamilton. I'm curious, how do you usually deal with that? And has that been the only time, or have you had other instances where that's happened?
Yeah, I think that protests and protesters are kind of part of being in a political family, and you kind of have to be ready for that. So it's definitely happened before. I know that, when we lived in Indiana, my dad was governor, they used to have these like signs they put around our house, like saying, Pence must go, when he was up for re-election. And so even early on as a little kid, I was kind of used to seeing that. And then in college and high school. And so, my dad always he always taught us, and my mom too, that, that's what America looks like. That's what freedom looks like, is what he says. Whenever people see the signs or protesters, he says, that's what freedom looks like. That means people are allowed to say that they're not happy with something that you're doing. And our elected officials, are able to be criticized, and that's a great thing about America. So I think that, it is hard to see that when it's your dad, obviously, like I'm, not a robot, like obsessed. But he's always kind of shown me that, that's part of it. So, it has definitely happened. It happens really all the time. But you just kind of have to be okay with it, I guess, and kind of just look at the bigger picture.
Wow. Yeah, no, talk about having to have thick skin. So I'm curious, how often do you get recognized when you're just out on your own, living your life?
I really don't. People ask me that a lot. I don't think people like recognize me at all. I think that people sometimes when I'm with my mom, when she has Secret Service and stuff, people will start to like look around, but not for me. And honestly, she doesn't get recognized that often. So it's really when we're with my dad, like everybody obviously will recognize him. And his hair is kind of like a dead giveaway. I feel like it's very like, so wearing a hat, maybe not as much, but I don't think I really get recognized. No one's like really come up to me very frequently.
Okay, all right, good to know. So I'm curious, how do you feel about the infamous or famous, depending on your perspective, Pence rule? And that is, for people who haven't heard of it, the rule that your dad, correct me if I'm wrong, doesn't dine alone with other women outside of your mother and obviously yourself and your sister.
That, I guess, that was kind of the thing my parents just decided just for their marriage. It wasn't really like a thing they were like putting on other people to do. But when my dad was elected to Congress, they just kind of decided for themselves that they wanted to just protect their marriage. And it's not as much about, like it being a rule as much as just not having the appearance of impropriety. And so, so I write about this in the book I published kind of about my dad called Where You Go. And I appreciate it as his daughter. I never, wondered about, my dad like having, like dinner with another woman, because it just wasn't something that would happen. I think in my personal life is definitely something that I would emulate in a marriage, just because I think that it just kind of protects the relationship with the other person. And I think, and in the book, I kind of talked about, when that happened and a lot of people were really criticizing him for it. And it happened actually right before really the Me Too movement. Um, that I remember, telling him at night one time, thank you for, putting my mom first. I mean, that's really what
Yeah.
it was about. It wasn't really like a, you know, big declarative statement on people's marriages. It was just for my mom. And I think that they've really shown me, just in a really effective way, like how to have a healthy marriage that I would, want to emulate someday.
No, absolutely. And I honestly, I really, really love that. And that was something that was really kind of encouraging to me. So a little, kind of a short story. I didn't actually think I was going to share this, but so I'm married. I'm a young married person. And recently my husband was in a situation where he was working on a project, and there was a female who had to work on the project with him. And she was just like, hey, can we meet at this restaurant to do X, Y, and Z, do the paperwork. And he was just like, that's not something really I'm open to. And he really got a lot of flack from the woman and from also the other people in the project. Like, are you serious right now? Are you kidding right now? And he really kind of felt bad. Like, am I being crazy? Am I being a prude for having this stance of I'm not going to go and meet privately or have, dinner with other women other than my wife? And so really honestly, it was a really great moment when your father did come out with this rule, and was very encouraging to both myself and my husband to be like, hey, actually we're not crazy. So that's something I personally really appreciate. And please tell him thank you for saying that, and also being willing to stand by that.
That's awesome. I will definitely tell him. Yeah, I think that it is, in our culture sometimes today, especially as women, I think that, there's kind of this unspoken thing like, you shouldn't feel weird if your husband does that, and because it's means you don't trust him. And that's not what it
No,
means. It
no.
means that, you want to put each other first. And so, yeah, I think when you do have like those inclinations, I've had a lot of friends, the same thing, who are married, who have said that, who have, just been like, oh, it makes me kind of uncomfortable. And if it does, then your spouse should honor that. And that's really what it's about.
And really, it's just a protection. In today's day and age, when the Me Too movement can destroy a man's reputation with zero backing, this protects men. And at least your dad won't have to deal with situations like Joe Biden. Let's just leave it there.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm actually curious on the topic of spouses. We have a lot of young conservatives listening and watching this. So I'm curious, what kind of dating advice would you give to today's young conservatives?
Oh, that's a good question. I think that I wrote a column about this about a year ago, I think, and it was really ironic because I just started dating my now boyfriend. And so I like put out this column about like how to be single. And so it was kind of awkward, but yeah, I kind of talked about how I think that, if you're single and dating, I really felt like when I was single, um, I wanted to, I guess, be the best person I could be, or, better myself in a lot of ways. And so I lived in LA last year, and I lived there for about a year, and I didn't date at all. And that's also kind of my personality. Like, I've never done the dating app thing. People do it, but I just haven't. And so I think that during that time, I really got to like think about, who I wanted to be with, and like who I wanted to find, and the kind of values that I personally felt strongly about. And I felt like that was kind of helpful for me because, instead of comparing different people to one another, I was just kind of thinking like, what are the things like I want, and how do I want to better myself so that when I find someone, I'm like the best person I could be for them. And that doesn't mean that I'm perfect, and definitely you still grow a lot in a relationship. But I think that it at least helped me go into a relationship knowing the things that I believed, or like I felt really strongly about. And then, you can kind of bounce that off of another person and see where you line up.
Okay, so be the best person you can be, focus on yourself and improving yourself, and you feel like that other person kind of come into your life.
Yeah, I think that a lot of times, like, I think that when you date around a lot, there's nothing wrong with that because it's good and you get experience, but you kind of see the kind of person you want to be with. But at least for my personality, I found that that just kind of distracted me from thinking like, what are the things that I want in a person? You know, what are the beliefs I have? And that has to go with politics and religion and, you know, the kind of life like I would want to lead, the kind of spouse I'd want to have, the kind of partner I'd want to have. And so for me, it just helped me to like take a step back and think like, okay, when I meet the person that I'm going to marry, you know, how do I want them to find me? You know, I want them to find me like very sure about a lot of things. And I think that that just helps your relationship start off on like a very strong foundation.
Absolutely. I definitely agree with that. Now, this next question is really, really serious. So take time to think about it if you need to. Should pineapple go on pizza?
Okay, I like pineapple on pizza actually. I don't know. I feel like
Yeah.
yeah, I would say yeah.
Okay, let's go with that. That's a controversial answer, but I'm going to go with it. All right, so I'm kind of curious. How did life change for you when your dad became president? Obviously, you'd already been used to him being in the public eye, so that was a factor, but did life change dramatically, or was it kind of like, oh, well, my dad's got a different job, or did things really impact your life?
Yeah, things did change pretty quickly, at least when he was picked during the campaign. I would say that that was probably like, that was really the fastest change. Um, I think that, yeah, I think that during, during like the transition and when he became vice president, we were a little bit more used to like the changes that were going to happen, or at least anticipated them.
Mm-hmm.
But during the campaign, since you kind of have about 3 months where you very much, you know, going towards one goal, but thinking like, you know, obviously we could not win. Um, that transitional period was a big time of change. So I think that yeah, right after he was selected and announced, then things really changed, and we had like Secret Service detail and really overnight, like a lot of things changed, and you know, you have a lot less privacy.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that privacy is definitely the biggest thing, and I think it's really a blessing that we were in the governorship before,
Yeah,
because
you'd already kind of accustomed yourself
yeah,
to that lack of privacy.
exactly. Yeah. I think that, you know, if my parents had security at that time. And I think if you didn't have any security and then you had Secret Service, that would be a hard transition.
Yeah, absolutely. I can only imagine.
Yeah.
So I know your faith is really important to you. And so my question for you today is, do you feel like faith has a place in modern politics today? And if so, how and why?
Um, yeah, you know, I think that honestly, politics and just your personal beliefs about things are always going to be impacted by factors in your life, including faith. And I think that, you know, people in America, you know, we're able to have different religious beliefs and, you know, different political beliefs. And so I think that I like seeing when politicians are, you know, upfront about why they have certain personal beliefs. And you kind of saw that a little bit like in the 2016 election. A lot
Mm,
of the Republican candidates like talked about during the primaries, talked about their own personal religion. And I think that's good. I think that that's just a conversation. It's just being honest. Yeah, I think that, you know, as much as anyone's comfortable with, you know, sharing your personal political beliefs and along with your religious beliefs just creates like a little bit more transparency.
absolutely. Now, you seem like a really well-read, well-studied, and opinionated lady. So, do you ever find yourself, I mean, I'm sure everyone, I feel like this is a dumb question now, but do you feel like you ever disagree with your dad? And I'm just going to guess that the answer is yes. My question is, how do you guys handle it? Do you guys have political discussions around the dinner table still, or you're like, no, that's a separate life?
Oh yeah, definitely. You know, growing up, I think, you know, like the dinner table conversations of, you know, what did you do at work today happened to include like, you know, foreign affairs and stuff like that. And so that was never, you know, there's no topic that's really off limits, I don't think, for our family. Um, and yeah, we're always encouraged to have our own opinions and own beliefs about things. And I think that is a really good thing that, I really value in my parents, that they really wanted us to decide things for ourselves, including religious beliefs. So, yeah, I mean, if I see something that I don't agree with, or I don't know enough about, or, thinking like the media is spinning something a certain way, I usually just call my dad like immediately and ask him. And so I get a lot of just his perspective on, what he's thinking through things. And, there's usually more to the story. So yeah, we just talk about it. And I think that really helps.
So one position I really, really appreciate that your father holds, and I'd like to know your position, is the abortion debate. Your father has come to, I mean, I think the most recent time I saw him was in January for the March for Life, and that's very unprecedented for a vice president to appear at the March for Life. That's huge. And so I'm a huge fan of that. My question is, for how do you feel on the abortion debate? Do you agree? Do you differ? And also, how do you stand specifically on the issues of rape, incest, and life of the mother?
Yeah, I'm pro-life. So yeah, morally and politically speaking, I'm pro-life. And I think that, that's something, I think honestly, that's probably the main issue that I first started aligning with. Even as a young kid, I went to the March for Life, like I marched in it. And that's just something, I mean, when I've had questions about other issues kind of pop up throughout, my young adult life, that the abortion one is just something I've just never really wavered on. I think that in the case of like rape, incest, and life of the mother, I won't get into that just because that's like a lot of political questions. But I think that just for me morally, I'm very pro-life, and so I think it's important that some of these bills are being passed in these states right now. We're seeing a lot of states take measures to protect the sanctity of life, while some states are obviously going in like the completely opposite direction. But I think like more than the political debate, it's really a cultural debate. So that's kind of what I'm interested in. I think that in order to kind of change, you know, the trend of abortion, you have to kind of change the culture behind it, and um, with compassion, influence people, and
Of course.
talk about it in like a kind way, and a way that's also gonna not alienate people and not make them feel like, oh, this is like a political thing. It's because it's super personal, obviously.
Of course, of course. It's more about making abortion unthinkable than it is illegal, because illegal doesn't necessarily solve the long-term problem, which is the heart of the issue. Now,
Yeah.
another topic I know you're super passionate about is taking a strong stand in support in defense of those who are being trafficked in human trafficking today. Can you tell me a little bit about how you got involved in that humanitarian issue?
Yeah, so I did. I just kind of started supporting A21, which is an organization that stands for Abolishing Slavery in the 21st Century. And I really just got introduced by my friend who showed them to me. And then I did like a fundraiser on my birthday one year, just completely like not connected to them at all. And ended up then being able to meet some of the people who run it. And so then when I did the Marlon Bundo books with my mom, we both picked charities that we were going to like donate some of the funds to. And so I picked A21. And so, yeah, they're an amazing organization. They definitely have opened my eyes to a lot of the stuff going on around the world. And they do a lot to help survivors also to kind of get back on their feet and get back in the job, marketplace. So that is a big thing, because obviously if you're going through something like that, you really need support like after you've been rescued as well.
Oh, absolutely. They say aftercare is the primary goal, because if you just rescue people and let them, go into the world again, they'll end up accidentally or purposely finding themselves back in those clutches again.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a problem in the United States too. People don't realize that as much, I don't think. So I think people are starting to recognize that more, that obviously we have human trafficking happening here, and which is terrible. So I think just also spreading awareness for people to be able to spot signs of human trafficking. A21 does a lot of videos to kind of help you figure out like what it might mean if you see somebody acting a certain way. Maybe they're like actually, enslaved by somebody.
Absolutely. Okay, so this next question is really important, and the people who follow me on Instagram know that I have very strong opinions about this. How do you feel about the term dog mom, or in your case, bunny mom?
Dog
So
mom.
Yeah. So you know how it's a cultural trend for people to go around being like, I'm a dog mom, or I'm a cat mom. And I'm using this voice because I personally, if you haven't picked up on it, don't like it. But I'm curious as to your take on this.
Um, I don't think I'd refer to myself that way. I don't know. I think, yeah, I feel like a mom really is like a human mom, like a baby's, having babies. But I think my sister-in-law for sure is like dog mom right now. But I don't know. But I think she'll have kids at some point. So maybe she will use it then. I don't know. So yeah, I don't know. I have no problem with other people using it, I guess. But I don't think I would say I'm a bunny mom.
You're not a bunny mom?
Mm-mm. Or if I
Okay.
just have a cat, I don't think I would say I was a cat mom.
Okay. See, I personally have a problem with it because it irritates me because people treat their pets like humans, but it's just apparently me because everyone around me are pet moms. So, I'm glad we kind of see eye to eye on this one.
Yeah.
All right. So I know that before the 2016 election, you got to spend a little bit of time with the Trump family. Can you tell me a little bit about your impressions of the family and your time with them?
Yeah, I did. It was kind of cool on the campaign trail. I got to meet them, and that was really great. I mean, they're a great family. They're very strong family. They definitely really rely on one another. So I think it's really cool to see how much they work together and support one another, especially on the campaign trail. Um, they were together like all the time, or split up all over the country campaigning. So yeah, I definitely really like seeing their example, and yeah, they're really great, nice people.
Very united.
Yeah.
So, on this subject, and I'm sure you get this question because I know I get this question all the time, and that is thrown at us by leftists of something along the lines of how can you say you're Christian or you're conservative or you are standing for these higher values when you have President Trump as your president and he has a less than spotless record, especially with women, particularly in his multiple affairs and various other negative comments about women. So my question for you is how do you face that? How do you reconcile that in your mind? And then also what is your response usually when you get that?
Yeah, I think that Christians, um, we have different reasons for voting for people. And I think that at least when I see that question asked like in the mainstream media, I always answer like, I can't speak for every Christian. And I feel like a lot of times the media does kind of generalize Christians and assume like, well, you have to, vote for someone who's perfect in every way or else you're being a hypocrite. Whereas really, I think a lot of Christians, they have very obvious serious political beliefs. A lot of them, very much align with the pro-life issue. And so they're going to vote for a pro-life president. I mean, that's just how it's going to go. So, yeah, I think that for me personally, supporting somebody who is going to advance policies that I agree with is much more important to me than I guess, electing somebody that is perfect. And I'm not perfect either. And I was asked this question on CNN one time, and I just kind of said, my dad has really shown me how to show people grace and realize that I'm not perfect. And if anybody understands that they're not perfect, then it's Christians, I mean, we get that. So I think that that's something that's probably misunderstood, at least in the mainstream media, that, Christians know that nobody's perfect. And we want to show grace and not judgment, but also we're going to elect people that are going to, advance policies that we think are going to be good for the country and that we agree with.
Yeah. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
So, quick question: do you think that do you think you'll ever run for politics in the political realm, or do you think you'll stay in the film, creative, and writing realm?
I don't know. I get asked that a lot. I don't think so. I think that I've kind of been raised to think, whatever God calls me to, I'll do. But honestly, I've never been interested in running for politics. Yeah, it's not something I think I like the commentary side more than actually being in office. But I don't know.
We'll
Maybe.
see then. We'll see. All right. Well, you'll have to let me know. We'll give you your first interview after you decide to announce for whatever you do, if you do.
For
All
sure.
right. Last question. Do you have a short story favorite memory that really stuck with you from your time with your family or your dad?
Yeah, that's a good question. Um, I guess what sticks out, I talk about this in the book Where You Go. Right after my dad was elected governor, the election results came in, and we had my siblings and I had we gotten gifts from my parents because they used to get my mom used to get us gifts every election when we were kids as kind of a little thank you. And so we had these gifts for my dad, win or lose, and he won, and it was pretty close for a little while, and we had nowhere to go that was private. And so we ended up, like, all five of us just going into the bathroom in this like hotel suite because we had security and stuff. And we wanted to give him these gifts and give my mom her gift privately. And so we ended up just like huddling in this bathroom. And that was, 2011 or 12. So, I mean, that kind of, I think that really, that signifies a lot for us going forward, that we were kind of going to do things together, and get any private moments that we could have together and just cherish one another. And so yeah, I think that kind of sticks out for me.
That is precious. I love that. A family, no shame, huddling in a bathroom so they can give each other gifts. That is a beautiful picture and a beautiful story. It just shows how united your family is. Well, thank you, Charlotte. Thank you so much for your time today. And then where can people find you for speaking, writing, contact?
Yeah. I'm on Instagram. You can reach out to me there. Also, my website is charlotterosepence.co. So you can also reach out. I think that there are some like links to agents' emails on there. But yeah, you can also directly contact me on Instagram, and I usually see stuff and respond.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. Have a beautiful rest of your day, and thank you for your time today.
Thanks. Awesome. You too.
Hey, conservative babe. Thanks for listening to this podcast, seriously, or watching on YouTube. In fact, if you're not watching on YouTube, go over to YouTube now, or vice versa, go to iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Please subscribe and leave a 5-star review. That is how this podcast makes it in the Apple rankings. That's how this podcast makes it in the YouTube world. It's because of your help and your support. And you know what? As much as I love putting these together, it is a lot of work. So as a personal thank you to me, let me be candid with you. I need ya to go share this video, like, and subscribe. Thanks.